Good evening, everyone. Thanks to Kia and Anna and Marcus and Tim and the whole crew for pulling this together. What an inspiring location. Let's enjoy it. Let's make more of these happen. I mean, I'm just blown away by this location. So, new thinking. Well, hopefully some of this will be at least fresh. And yeah, I'm going to firstly tell you a little bit about group commerce, just so that you can understand what it is we do. Basically, we're powering media companies like the New York Times into the e-commerce markets, because they traditionally don't sell stuff to people, they just provide content and they put advertising around that. And so what we're doing is helping them to enter the e-commerce markets and start selling stuff to people, but it's well thought through stuff people actually want, so that it's on brand and people actually like it. And to bring that to life a little bit, here is a New York Times deal, which is running right now. They're a higher end brand. They're trying to appeal to a sort of a better educated, higher income person here in New York City. This is actually a product. It's a hair care product, but typically they're doing experiences like eating and education and hearing amazing speakers. So that's New York Times. Thrillist, it's a young male urban newsletter. They're using this for, it's like daily candy for men. And as you can see here, what is it? The bottle service and burlesque extravaganza. I mean, they're appealing to a certain kind of guy. And so that's what we're doing for them. We're powering all of this. All of what you see here is on our technology, and we source the deals and we merchandise and we do things and basically help them to enter the world of e-commerce. Some of you know Groupon and Gilt Group. That's who has inspired our company. Daily Candy, what's that? Lucky Strike lanes for the ladies. That's another client of ours. And Meredith with their parents.com brand. So they're selling stuff for mommy and stuff for the kids. So I think you get the idea. So what about new ideas for New Zealand business, and what can we do to sort of help with this? So understandably, I'm a little biased. I'm going to talk about technology. We've only got 5 minutes, so we're not going to solve the world's problems right now, but we're certainly going to talk about a couple of things relating to technology. So the first thing is that technology as an industry is something that New Zealand could and should be investing in and participating in a lot more aggressively. And one of the reasons for that, aside from the fact that it's an extremely fast-growing large market, is that it doesn't suffer from the tyranny of distance that many other industries suffer from, which hold New Zealand back a little bit sometimes. So I think that's a really important point. And again, the tech markets are going to continue to grow very quickly. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we've all heard about the number 8 wire mentality. As a farmer growing up in the King Country, I put in my fair few chain of hill country fences, and I can tell you that number 8 wire is incredibly good to work with. It's very malleable, and I was very disappointed whenever the number 12 galvanized steel wire was rolled out, because it's very hard to work with. So I really appreciate this number 8 wire mentality thing. But the point is, New Zealand culture breeds ingenuity, innovation, people who just get it done. They're very capable people, Kiwis. And that, of course, breeds ideas. And really, technology is about finding a problem and coming up with a solution to it using technology. And many of the things that you take for granted today were problems that have been solved by technology. And that's something which I think New Zealanders are hardwired actually to participate in. Question for someone. What is the non-US country with twice the population of New Zealand only, so it's a small country, that has the most number of listed companies on NASDAQ? Thank you. 6 million people, 63 companies listed on the NASDAQ exchange. The next closest is 30, and that's Canada, a much larger country than Israel. So Israel has a culture which has bred innovation. It's a different culture than New Zealand's, but it's an example of a small country which, due to sort of their focus on technology and innovation and their cultural sort of properties, has been very successful. And of course, Israel has some pretty angry neighbours, so they've got to have a very strong military, and that military is driven by technology. And so a lot of those people who graduate from the military become technology entrepreneurs. So I think that's an interesting example. The old maxim for success in entrepreneurship, you need 3 things: idea, funding, and you need execution. So on ideas and funding, I think firstly, the No.8 Wire mentality gives us a lot of ideas in New Zealand. Funding, we're making a lot of progress. Another question, what size is the angel technology investing market in the Boston area? It's $50 million per annum. And that's the amount of money that's being invested into tech companies in New Zealand right now, small tech companies, at the angel stage. That's the seed stage. So that's actually a pretty vibrant technology industry. There's about 300 startups in total have been funded since 2006, and a total of about $200 million has been invested. So, Icehouse, Powerhouse, K1W1, there's a bunch of entrepreneurial activity going on in New Zealand in the tech scene, which is actually quite impressive. The New Zealand government has a $160 million VC co-investing fund, which co-invests in some of this stuff. And so, there's a lot going on there. But I want to talk about execution. Because, if you're a Kiwi entrepreneur who's come up with a good idea, he's got a little traction in the New Zealand market, maybe Australia, it's time to go to the US. It's kind of intimidating. And my point here is that the New Zealand government, with help from the private sector, should provide a platform to help these small but very great ideas to come into the US market, because entering the US market is a recipe which many have done before, and it's a waste of time and effort for the little guy to relearn all of that. The setting up of the company, the getting of visas, the introductions to venture capitalists, etc. This is something which could be facilitated as a platform out of New Zealand, supported by the New Zealand government, to help our entrepreneurs get into the US market and other markets more successfully. Because relearning as you enter this market, your chances of success are significantly reduced. And funding is something which I think people are intimidated by, going to see the big bad VC. Well, let me tell you something. VC's livelihood is deal flow. And if we set up relationships with a bunch of VCs of good Kiwi tech companies which came to be presented to them in the right way, they would be funded. There is a lot of venture capital floating around in this market right now for technology companies, and that's something which we could provide a better platform for. So that's something I think which is a huge opportunity. And actually alongside that, business development and sales, because once you're here in this market, there's a certain way that you enter the market, that you go and talk to your target audience, that way that you sell your proposition. And that's something which would require hiring professionals who are connected and used to doing this in the US market. But as a platform for success for young companies from New Zealand, this is a huge opportunity. The next point is New Zealand has an amazing brand. I mean, one thing I've learned 13 or 14 years of working in multiple countries, especially with US technology companies, is that New Zealand is like nirvana to a lot of these people. Not many of them have been there. They all want to go there one day. So why don't we make it easy for them? Why don't we attract technology talent to New Zealand? Because you can't just do it with ideas. You need to have the execution, and that includes engineering talent to actually build this stuff. So, a visa, a package to enjoy New Zealand, fair compensation, and equity in the businesses that ultimately come to the US as a 3-year package for a talented technology leader, as well as actual engineers who are going to come down to New Zealand and teach people down there how to do it well as help progress some of these companies. I think that's very low-hanging fruit that we could and should be doing. And again, on the subject of technology talent, we absolutely need to develop this industry more. There's not a lot going on in terms of making engineering sexy in New Zealand. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I tell you what, I think engineering is incredibly sexy. It's making stuff, it's creating new ways to do stuff, it's solving problems. And we need to change the perception that engineering is not a great career for people in New Zealand. In other countries, that does not exist to the same extent. We don't need another lawyer, accountant, banker. We've got plenty of those. Let's get more people that create stuff. And I think it goes the other way as well. There's a lot of entrepreneurial sort of talent in New Zealand. Rather than having them building the next coffee shop, let's teach them how to create a web business, create a technology business, because it's actually not rocket science. You need people who are specifically good at building technology, and then you need people who can understand how to harness that to solve a problem. But anyone with a business interest and a little bit of know-how can actually do that. So that's it. Tech industry, great opportunity for New Zealand. It's no tyranny of distance going on there. Developing and celebrating New Zealand tech talent, importing tech talent, and ultimately an infrastructure to help these businesses come into the US market, at least to begin with, and then other markets thereafter. Thank you.